All right. We're joined by Katie today. Katie, where does the podcast find you?
I am in my home office in Portland, Oregon. This used to be our laundry room, and because we have a small house and now four people in it, we
Um,
converted the laundry room to an office. And I'm coming back recently from parental leave.
nice. Was that a COVID change or was that a we are desperate for room now because there's more kids coming?
It's We are desperate for room. There was more kids, so we had our first kiddo in 2021 after COVID,
Sure.
and we made the laundry room change after that because we realized we needed an indoor space to be able to work
Yeah.
from home. Both my partner and I both work from home now, and we have a 780 square foot house. Now, two children.
That's awesome. I feel like if we had this conversation like 4 years ago, everybody'd be like, you're in a laundry room that's
Yeah.
converted. And I'm like, yeah, I saw people working in like closets,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you just came off paternal leave. How was that? I know I like to talk about art, science, creativity. Obviously, bringing more people into the world changes that sometimes. Have you noticed anything? Okay, you're coming kind of back into the work cycle too. Is it harder the second time? Is it easier the second time? Is it more challenging now with just the world as it is?
So it is definitely less of a change with the second one. For my first kiddo, when I was on maternity leave, the first time is actually when I started a new career. Is I decided I had some downtime, some time to really think about what I wanted the world to look like
Mm,
for my child. I had that new perspective. And this time I already have that perspective. So it's more of just reinforcing and building. And of course, we lucked out and have the super chillest baby. We thought we had a chill baby with the first one, but this one is
yeah,
easier and just happy and sleeps a lot.
that's
There's
cool.
everything's pretty
I
good.
think that means they're going to be terrorizers when they turn 16, right?
Probably. Yeah.
You only get one easy pass, right? Either get them easy young or get them easy old. That's cool. I know, like, so your background, you're coming from science background. I know you recently started, well, I guess recently, relatively, started more of a product position in a company, I guess. So can you talk a little bit about, you said you wanted to see the world better for your kids. Like, how did that kind of shape your thinking at the time, being, environmentally conscious kind of already, into like, I want to actually like devote more of my life to that than just like buying organic and trying to recycle and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. I feel like in my life I've had two or three points when I was able to really think and devote some time to that, like where do I intentionally want my life to go towards? And that was one of them. And my science background was, I mean, I was doing air quality work, making sure that air quality coming out of facilities was good, that air quality in neighborhoods was good. So I wasn't doing something that was inconsistent with making the world a better place, but I was just thinking about, we have all these air quality regulations, and in the US, in most places, it's actually air quality is quite good.
Yeah.
There are some notable exceptions, but for the most part, we've solved a lot of the problems. Where could I go and put my efforts that would be the most impactful? And that's an opportunity just found me. And so my background is
Yeah.
environmental engineering, but I also did biochemistry in undergrad and did some, actually a sustainability class in undergrad, which at the time in 2005, I think was
Yeah.
pretty novel. And yeah, I stumbled across this position that a friend of mine was starting a company, and it sounded like a good fit for that kind of being more in the driving change
Right.
to happen.
Yeah. So it's like coming out of more of like a policy or like an informed policy role into more of a we're going to make stuff and
Right.
making it not only in a sustainable way, but also like contributing the stuff that you make to make things better as well. I know a lot of people have a hard time in academia kind of coming out of that whole world into more of a commercial, especially a startup. Like it's one thing to kind of go into an established company, I think, as an academic, and it's well funded, and you might have a team. versus a startup where it's like you get to wear every single hat possible and be struggling to survive every day, which is probably actually closer to academia.
Yeah, it is. As you were talking through that, I was like, actually, so I was, when I started grad school, I was the first grad student that my advisor ever had. And so he had a startup package, but other than that, we were trying to get him tenure. He got tenure, no problem. He's now the chair of the department. Like
Nice.
there
Yeah.
was no way he was going to fail at that. But there was definitely some push for trying to make our mark early so that we could secure funding and that so he could secure his position at the university.
Right.
And then with my postdoc at University of Michigan, I was also in a really new group. I think the professor there, she'd been there for 2 or 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was the same thing. It was like, let's look for money. Let's try to figure out where we can be impactful within the realm of our research,
Right.
which was all environmental chemistry, atmospheric chemistry focused. And so going into the startup mode was actually kind of similar. There was not a lot of resources. You had to figure out how to do things with the tools at hand. Yeah. And I initially was working on a lot of grants and I managed to get some grants and also working on the product development piece. So it was, I guess from that perspective, just the feeling of being in that smaller group, the trying to figure out funding, directing where things are going. It was very similar, but the application was so different. I wasn't talking about how these different molecules interact. I wasn't thinking about chemical reactions really at all. I was thinking more about how do I tell a story about a product. So that was quite a change.
And that's entrepreneurism 101, right? You have to make something, you have to then convince people that it's something they need. Like ideally you're solving a direct problem and it's an easier convincing, but it's still a lot of storytelling. It's a lot of why us over something else. And so for folks, I think in academia, like grant writing is probably way harder than anything you'll ever experience in the commercial world. Like, if you can successfully convince governing bodies to give you funding on like a hope and a dream, like you can be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yes.
That's all. Yeah. That's a really great story. And I find that a lot with folks too. And maybe a little bit for like academia for folks, like a lab startup, you typically get a position at a university. They give you some sort of funding. It's not dissimilar to a startup in, venture capital where you get a X amount of dollars and have to like kind of make it or not. There's additional granting you can do typically, and you might get other funds from other places, but it's not a very easy thing to do. And same is kind of true in the entrepreneurial world as well. So you're still kind of in that science base, and like I think you said like you had a friend who is starting this company, and you kind of floated into that. What was it like to make that decision? Like you had a child, right? And then you're kind of like, I want to make this jump. Did that review a little bit? I know like startups are always a little crazy, and like startups with a family, I feel like are a little bit crazier sometimes. Is there any consideration there?
Yeah, I did work on was moonlighting for quite a number of months, year and a half. So I had my full-time job still. So that made it a lot more secure. So I'd be working nights and weekends, which was again more secure financially, but it was a lot more to do.
Yeah.
Especially with a kid who you want to spend time with and a partner who you want to spend time with as well. But ultimately ended up making the switch, and that was pretty scary, but we'd been getting good traction, and it just seemed like the right thing. Again, it was something that I knew I wanted to do as my kid was growing up, and I was looking around and just seeing all the scary things about the tipping point of the climate and the amount of plastic waste from single-use plastics that's out there just reinforced, okay, I could stay in my stable job and work on air quality for the rest of my career, or I could really try to make this impact so that someday when kid is older, I can say, you know what, I really tried.
Yeah. And I think when we first met, probably around about a year ago, and we had talked initially, and I feel like the zeitgeist of plastics are kind of bad and have all these downsides that we didn't really consider was just really starting to gain popularity. And like BPA obviously was a big thing. That was a few years ago. People, the chemical, they wanted to get rid of that. PFAS, I think, is now more of in the lexicon. People still might not know about it, but it's definitely more common that I hear. So I guess before we jump into that, we haven't really discussed what is it you do now, and what products are you working on? I kind of like that because I guess like everybody with this content nonsense, they have to like have an algorithm, fitting form. But I also like to kind of introduce people before we just jump right in, right? Because this is about as much as the people doing the stuff as the stuff. So what is the stuff that you do?
Yeah. So I work for Renegade Plastics now, and we make a polypropylene based fabric that is an alternative to vinyl fabrics.
Hmm.
Vinyl fabrics are absolutely everywhere. They are used in office furniture, restaurant furniture, billboards, tarp or truck covers, ends of examples, gymnastics mats, sleeping mats for
Mhm.
kids. They
It's
are
like
made out of,
anything that's like a plastic sheet, right? Like
yep,
you can think of, yeah.
yep. And then they gained a lot of notoriety for a little bit. And I think we maybe touched on this when we talked before. They gained notoriety with the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, which was vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is the monomer of which PVC is made, and it is stuff. It is carcinogenic, it's toxic. You polymerize it and becomes stable, which is the good news. So sitting on your vinyl furniture is not inherently like just poisoning you.
Right.
But in order to make the fabric flexible, people put in additives like phthalates, which are endocrine disruptors. They might put in lead or cadmium, which
Oh,
are not great.
awesome.
Yeah.
I had not known that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Those are some of their, I think they're plasticizers.
Sure.
Or they'll put in other stuff. So it's not just vinyl chloride
Yeah.
being polymerized. There's a lot of additives. And then they might add things like you said, like PFAS onto it to add certain properties like weather or stain resistance. So all of those together are making a product that is not great for the people making it. It's not great while it's in use. It can leach out these harmful products, and then disposing of it creates this forever. So we have this polypropylene, and polypropylene is what's in yogurt cups. It's in Tupperware. It is still a plastic, but I mean, it's Tupperware.
Yeah.
So it is, it's so much safer. And then for the people who are making it, it's a lot safer as well. That's where kind of my air quality side comes in. Still get
Sure.
to do a little bit of that as we're looking. We have a pilot facility now in Colorado, and so we extrude this plastic. And I had to do some research for, do we have any emissions? The
Yeah.
answer is no.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
I think the plastic argument that I generally hear a lot is like recycling, or how do we get rid of it or reuse it. From what I understand, like reusable plastic is like largely fake. Like we live in the Pacific Northwest, and we're kind of famous for our million types of recycle bins that we meticulously sort everything
Yes.
into. And my understanding is that all largely gets burned now. Oops. But the people who make plastic want new material to work with. By and large, it's harder to work with recycled plastic. You also have to use more chemicals and stuff, right? So it's like this idea like you just, it magically goes in a truck and then comes back out as a bottle for you is like a big misnomer. But it's also the manufacturing regardless. Like you talked about the train derailment, which was a year or two ago now, probably, where
Yeah.
this is something it's really hard to, I think, get through for folks. Is like your plastic bottle goes through thousands of chemicals and different stages and exposes people. And then when that plastic bottle gets like spit out, all that crap that went to make it has to go somewhere, right? It's like it's not consumed entirely by the process. So now we have a bunch of like industrial waste, effectively, what we call it, right? That you also have to do something with.
Mm-hmm.
And then the end product, the plastic, doesn't typically then go anywhere. It goes to the landfill or like a single use. So some of this I feel like is a little jargony, but I think it's in the zeitgeist enough to talk through. But when it comes to like your is it polypropylene? I'm going to get all of the words wrong.
Polypropylene. You got it.
Is that a recycled product, or is there some recyclable in there? And then you also talked about it's much more durable than vinyl. So maybe why, if vinyl is out there and ubiquitous, it's like, why is it out there and ubiquitous? And then why would I choose your product over that if it's already like on the market, sort of thing?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about this brought up The, like you mentioned, plastic, people who sell plastic want you to
Yeah.
think that you can recycle it. And by and large, you can recycle a lot of plastics. Whether or not they practically get recycled and get turned into a new product is a big question. And I think there's a lot of people trying to incorporate recycled content into things that are just not a good fit for
Oh,
easy
sure.
incorporation of recycled content. So we talk about like the plastic bottles or shampoo bottles or other products that really come into contact with things that we're using on or putting into our bodies. Those maybe aren't the best places to incorporate recycled content because you do need so much purification of that recycling. Whereas if you have something that's like separating car parts, so ours are used in what's called
Sure.
automotive dunnage. It would be something we could use, something that vinyl's used in, something you could use our product in. That doesn't need to have the same removal of things, of impurities that a plastic water bottle you're drinking out of has.
Right.
Right. So thinking about those use cases, where can you put this material in so you don't need to put as much energy into the recycling? So we've done some tests initially with what's called regrind. So basically they'll take like a nursery pot, like those black nursery pots, put it into a grinder, grind it up. It's these little flakes, and we can put that into into our manufacturing. We do need some washing,
Sure.
but you can't just have dirt in it. We are sensitive to that, but you can just get that regrind material and we can use that into some products, which is a lot easier than all the processes needed to get food grade polypropylene back
Sure.
out. So I think that people need to be thinking a lot more about how to design the products and how to choose the products that have recycled content in them so that you are reducing that barrier. It's kind of the background to some of that.
And that's like a really good point too, because like my plastic bottle, PFAS and BPA, and I think hopefully everyone understands now that plastic, while it seems like it's pretty solid, isn't, especially depending on what you put in it. Leaching of chemicals will happen. This is also true for many other materials. There isn't some magic material that doesn't have any sort of leaching property that I'm aware of. Glass is pretty good, assuming it's made well, and
Yeah,
it's also usually not. So there you go.
except for they used to put lead in glass. So.
And they still a lot of the manufacturing processes, they'll form or mold them, and then they use kind of like sands, I guess, and there's all
Yeah,
sorts of nasty crap in that too,
yeah,
because it makes it easier to work with. But the like, I think that's a really interesting point in that the consumer, I'm much more worried about drinking out of something that might be leaching than like how my car parts are delivered to the factory, right? I would prefer them to not be in plastic, but if that is required, at least I don't necessarily have to worry so much about ingesting the plastic separator for the mufflers or whatever, I don't know about how this works, but what do you see as like the primary drivers in that? Is it like vinyl is just cheap and it's like the thing that's just been there and it's just hasn't been disrupted because it's like every other technology, it's like first to market, kind of works good enough and nobody asks questions? Or is there more to it than?
yeah. I think it's a combination. Vinyl's been around since the like 50s or 60s commercially as a fabric, and so
Mm,
they've had so long to develop that product, and it's just a commodity product. It's cheap.
sure.
It can be very cheap. There's a lot of cheap vinyl out there. It can be a lot more expensive as well, depending on what you need it for. It's well known. It is really durable, and it has just a wide range of properties. And so our polypropylene alternative is often comparable in strength
Mm,
to the vinyl. It is lighter weight. It's 40% lighter weight, which seems great when you mention that you're saving on
yeah,
transportation costs, like people can lift it easier. But the weird thing that we're encountering is people are like, I use a 16-ounce vinyl. I want 16 ounce. I want this heavy product. Like, but you
oh,
don't need it to get the same strength. So that's one of
sure,
these just like entrenched
yeah.
industry things that people are like, this is what we're used to. All of our specs are written this way. This is what we need.
But I suppose like when you talk about like manufacturing tolerances are, we'll use inches for folks who don't do metric very much. But the that is there, do you find like then is there like a lot of retooling and stuff involved then, or a lot of like re-engineering of stuff? Or is it just like, if you have it, I'll just make up numbers, an 8 ounce polypropylene, and that's roughly equivalent to a 16-ounce vinyl. You just kind of like let it rip. I suppose it depends on like
Yeah.
the what you're doing too, but is there like a generality there, or is there just like a knowledge gap?
Yeah, we found that there is often a knowledge gap, and so we work really closely with fabricators to help them figure that out. So if they are used to hot air welding with a 16-ounce vinyl,
Sure.
you can use the same equipment to hot air weld the polypropylene, but you need to change the settings. Actually often go faster,
Oh, okay.
and which is great because then you can produce it faster and it's not as heavy to hold because it's lighter weight, but the feel of it's different, right? So someone's used to working with this heavy
Sure.
thing going slow, they have to get
Yeah.
used to then going a little faster with a lighter weight product. So it's probably better for them in the long run
But
in
there's
terms
like
of
an
maybe
adoption
ergonomics
change.
for
Yeah. Well, so it's like with product development, I do talk about software product development. It's the same principles, but applied very differently. So like, let's just assume your product is superior for the sake of argument, but you're running into like the user adoption problem. It sounds like, and it's
Mhm.
part of its marketing. It's like, it's a different thing. So you have to like overcome the lack of knowledge about what the thing is. That's a battle that everybody has to go through. But not only that, you have all of these ingrained systems that people are trying, so it's, I guess for folks at home, it'd be like, you know, removing your Android or your Apple phone and coming up with some like totally different iconography that you now have to work in. It still calls, it's still text, but it's all really different. And there's a little bit of an opportunity cost to that. And so then you have to do some more work on your side to like market, like you were saying.
Mhm.
You might be able to put more throughput through. You might be able to go faster. You might have, less injuries or whatever, the metrics are you're trying to sell on. So it becomes a more of like a sales product marketing problem than an actual like product invention problem, right? That's really, I didn't see, this is the kind of, this is why I love talking with folks who's like, this is stuff I don't really think about that often. And I find it absolutely fascinating. It's like, this is like literally everything you have in your home is probably some sort of plastic at this point,
Oh, yeah.
right? And it's
Yeah.
just,
Strangely enough, I have a very little plastic in my house, somewhat intentionally, but I do have our tarps.
that's a, yeah. So like so you said fabric earlier too, which I think is interesting. Cause like when I think of plastic, I think of it as like a material, like it's a plastic sheet, right? Apparently
Yeah.
that might not be the right way to think about it. So is like a plastic tarp different than like a fabric that I would make something out of? Like, how does that, like, what is the differences? Like, how does that even work?
People sometimes use it interchangeably. Vinyl is also like pleather. So that's pleather is probably better known as a fabric, but you can also
Sure.
call it a textile. But it's a fabric because you have this woven pattern.
Oh, for
So we
folks at
have a
home,
woven
we're looking at
scrim.
plastic sheets. Watch the YouTube.
Yeah. And there's a woven scrim. This is a 4.5 by 4.5 squares per inch. And then we have a really fine one. So you can't really see it
Oh,
here.
wow.
But this,
Yeah.
when you hold it, it's certainly sheet-like, but it is also somewhat fabric. So we often in our company we often use them interchangeably, and it just depends who we're talking to
Sure.
for what they call it. But then we extrude, so we heat up and polymerize, or not polymerize, and plasticize the polypropylene, and then it comes out in the film, and then it gets
Mm-hmm.
like it sticks onto the scrim. So basically, it gets heated onto the scrim. It melts the scrim just a little bit, or I guess the plastic gets into the scrim layers. Doesn't melt. It gets into the scrim layers, and that's how we make it. And we do that on two sides. And so we do make a tarp out of it. So the polyethylene woven tarps are the ones, those like blue plastic tarps that you've
Yeah.
seen all over the place,
Tarp
in
brand
shredded.
tarp.
So we make a version of that. So that's the similar. It is less of a fabric and it's more of just like a
Sure.
sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like I think a verbal etymology here too that I'm like really fascinated in like the scientific or technical applications of words, because there's jargon and then there's like words that mean absolutely radically different things in different industries. And when I hear you keep saying fabric, I'm like, because I think about it as like textiles, right? Like my shirt is cotton, also might be polyester, which is plastic effectively, right? So
Hmm.
you can make like threads from plastic too, and I don't
Yeah.
think people realize that.
Yeah.
So is there like less in your tarp products? So I think like I do want to come back to you did mention you don't have a lot of plastic in your house, so we'll put a footnote on that. But when it comes to like chemical leaching or shedding. Does the polypropylene do that less than vinyl? Because I think one thing I remember hearing about vinyl is that it's like really bad in sun. It starts to really break down over
Yes,
time. Is that true? Or am I
that is
making that up?
totally true.
I learned
Yeah.
something.
More than I knew about this when I started this job. Yeah. So vinyl does, it cracks once it's
Oh,
exposed to
sure.
UV a lot. So it's partly because it's the migration of the plasticizers out. And so it's no longer flexible. And our polypropylene product does not do that. I've had my tarp outside in Portland for, I think, going on 3 years now. And it's just sat
Wow.
outside covering my bikes. And I recently actually lent it to my neighbor who called on Thanksgiving Day, called me and was like, "Do you have a tarp? We just discovered a hole in our roof."
Oh my God.
So I was like, "Okay, your roof gets priority over my bikes. Here you go."
Yeah.
And they used it, no problem, put it on their roof. It's
That's
now back on the bikes, but it's just been living outside in the sun and rain and ice, and yes, we don't have that problem, which is
that's
nice. And then we don't
bonkers.
have the plastic shedding the way the polyethylene
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, anyone who's used those like blue tarp brand tarps, right? They like last maybe a year,
Yeah.
maybe two if you're really lucky and it's outside and like active use. And then
Yeah.
they start to like they just disintegrate basically, right?
Yeah.
You get the like fringy kind of and then you'll get little wear holes all over the place and they're like durable to a point things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there like more of a cost? Like what's the downside other than like I just do vinyl stuff and that's what I know?
Sometimes it really is just that. They're
Yeah,
like, this is what my specs are. Yeah, your stuff will be less expensive potentially,
sure.
but we don't, sorry, we're slow to adapt. There is a higher cost compared to a lot of the cheaper vinyl. That is a reality. But of course, once you factor in, I mean, we think, of course, this is why we're doing it. When you factor in things that are important to us, like worker safety
Sure.
and environmental safety, longevity, and then the ability to split and not just landfill it at the end of life, I think that it's a lot less expensive.
And cost is a really interesting thing, right? So there's
Mhm.
value, right? There's the actual like dollars or like time that has to go into something to like manufacture it or make it usable. But there's a book called Donut Economics. I don't think I plugged it either. It's been a while since I plugged it on the podcast, but it's an assembly of economic theories talking about it's basically the idea that what you measure is what happens. And so you hit on that principle, and I really love the principle because a lot of people I think cost is just time or money, right? That's kind of how we think about cost in America. It's way more than that, and we choose to not look at the costs to the environment, right? So
Mhm.
vinyl might be a really cheap product, and I get a $10 tarp instead of a $20 tarp, but then I poison the groundwater in the process. Or I have to buy another $10 tarp every year or two, but I don't internalize that cost because of how our brains work, right? I
Mhm.
just go buy a new $10 tarp every
Yep.
time I need it. Now I spend $100 instead of $20 for one tarp for 5 years or whatever the math turns out to be. It's just the compounding principle. Warren Buffett's talked about it. But the donut economics idea is looking also in terms of like the human costs of things, like how hazardous is it to work on? Like, what was it? Timex watches when they first started used radium on the dials and
The glow
poisoned.
girls, right?
Exactly. They
Yeah.
gave all these women cancer and they like all
Yeah.
died, but hey, you had a cool glowy watch, right? So is that cost good? They thought it was until everybody started dying and their teeth fell out. And then they're like, maybe we probably shouldn't do this. I feel like that's where we're at with a lot of our consumption in the country and probably the world at this point is we've really, I think, solved unit economics, right? We can make things the cheapest possible. And that usually means exploiting people. That usually means exploiting the environment. That usually means all of these long reaching problems that we don't deal with in the current time. Because where do all these tarps go that my $10 tarp, I have 10 of them. Well, they all go to a landfill and they sit there for 1,000 years or 10,000 years or whatever it is. And then probably poison the groundwater. We're figuring that out really quickly too. So I like to like kind of push back on that kind of stuff too a little bit and get people trying to think a little bit more about it's all how we measure. And yeah, if you only have $10, I guess you only have $10. But I would say like, can you figure out a different solution to maybe get something that's a little bit more quality? And we used to call things quality that lasted a long or had
Yeah.
minimal impact. that isn't true anymore, right? Like everything is quality in quotes, and a lot of it's just garbage that's single use. But I'm finding a lot, especially in like my personal consumption, that doing a little bit of due diligence, like I should probably plug the brand. I don't think, well, I don't like plugging brands, but I have a brand of pants that is from Canada, and they make a very nice heavyweight denim, and they're a little bit more expensive than a normal pair of pants or whatever a value brand. You know, I think they're like $120 a pair. Maybe that's cheap. I don't know. I think it's a lot. However, they last. The first pair I bought is like 6 or 7 years in now.
Nice.
Right. So
Yeah.
they're really quality. They're comfortable. I guess are relatively stylish, for as stylish as I guess I am. But I could go buy a $40 pair of pants, and I would have probably had to replace them 3 or 4 times. So I want to talk a lot more about that, but I also want to hit the point you said where you don't have a lot of plastic in your house. You're basically like making plastic for a living, but you don't really have a lot of it. Do you want to talk a little bit about why that is?
Yeah. So I think a lot of plastic products are not designed for that dual use, for the, or they're not designed for thinking about what's the next life cycle for some of the human contact things. There are standards like the consumer safety protections for children's products. So having being in plastics and then seeing how much plastic my kid comes into contact with like for the mattresses and
Yeah.
at daycare and now at preschool. And those have to pass safety standards, but I also know that there's an acceptable limit of lead that can be in
Hmm.
a child's product, and it's not zero.
Right.
Um, and that's the case with a lot of plastics. So I try to be really intentional. Like I recently got rid of my yoga mat, which was vinyl, and I got like a nice one that was just, I looked for a long time for, do they have any better materials? Do they, and they didn't. So I just got one that was like certified safe. I upgraded. So that's probably one of the examples of plastic I
Right.
have is my new better vinyl.
Yeah. So it is vinyl. So,
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
it's interesting you say that because I struggled for months to find a yoga mat that wasn't just like stamped plastic or like fake rubber. And I did find one that was made of jute, which is a plant-based fiber, but it did have, they call it, it's some weird name for it, but it's effectively recycled plastic in throughout the weaving to give
Mm,
it so it's not like a rug, it is more like a mat, and it has that kind of matty feel to it. But it was like the least amount of plastic that I could
yeah.
find in a product, but still have plastic in it. And it was ridiculous. So I totally understand that struggle, and I get
Yeah.
it because it's just one of those things too where it honestly has a better feel for yoga. I think it's not, you have a little bit of the plastic texture to stop you from slipping.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on a rug, you'd be all over the place. But it also has that fibery, earthy feel to it, which is kind of fun. I don't think the company exists anymore, unfortunately.
Oh no.
It was
Yeah. Not many
expensive.
people are looking for this.
No, exactly. They want the $10 yoga mat,
Yeah.
right? And they
Yeah.
want to just go about their life. And I get people, not everyone can afford it, but you're going to go through many more $10 yoga mats than you are if you get a $50 yoga, probably.
Yeah. But yeah, so we put a lot of thought into just what we're purchasing and try to look for those more local products that are intentionally made, that where they're thinking through all these externalities and have at least put some thought into it. They're not going to be
Sure.
perfect,
Right.
but they've at least put some thought into it, and that's what we put around our house for at least a lot of the big and the routine purchases. One that I put a lot of thought into is like our dishwasher
Oh, sure.
pod. So
Yeah.
we used to use the squirt bottle, the liquid dish soap for so long they
Mhm.
stopped carrying it at the supermarket. And so I was using pods for a while and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so much
Yeah.
plastic that's they say it dissolves, but it really just
Biodegradable in quotes, right?
it's microplastics. It turns
Yeah.
into microplastic. So there's a store in Portland that does plastic free. And that's one area where I'm like, I don't need a plastic thing for this.
Right.
Like this plastic is not useful in this case. Plastic in
It's
medical
convenient.
exam furniture, totally useful. I want to be able to clean it. I want it to be easy to clean.
Yeah.
Great. Plastic in my dishwasher pod, like that just is unnecessary. So we put a lot of thought into where we use plastics and where we use different materials so that we're making at least trying to get all the information we can and make an informed decision.
No, and that's such a good point too. And like I for dish soap, I used to go to a co-op locally that had like the bulk dish soap, but you just fill up whatever, and
Uh-huh.
then they stopped carrying it for some reason. I haven't been able to really find a good supplier. So I would get the big refillable dish soap things and then refill my, handheld size one or whatever. Because it's less plastic. It's still plastic and it still probably gets burned, but like at least it's less overall. The dish podge thing's really interesting too. Because I also went through this recently. I was using the scoops, which sucks. Anyone who's ever used like the powder, it's not great. And then I came across the little plastic stamp pods, and they have the super grease and all this marketing bullshit. They work really well, but then I was thinking about it one day, and it was like biodegradable plastic, and I was like, what the does that mean? Right? Because marketing everything anymore, none of it actually tends to mean what. So I started looking into it, and to your point, it is. It just, yeah, it biodegrades into microplastics, and then I drink it, and it gives me cancer, or
Yep.
dementia, or whatever else this is going to do to us.
So the funny thing is, so I being head of product, the marketing team, which is really two people at Renegade, one and a half. I feel like they probably get annoyed with me all the time, but I
Yeah,
insist on going over everything, and they like make a claim, and I'm like, that is that is not technically correct. Yes, at a lot of other companies, they would definitely say that, but here's what we can say. Like
right.
everything needs to go through me to make sure we're qualifying it and putting that, here's what I can back up with what I know and what we've tested and what I feel is authentic. Um,
I've had a similar struggle in product marketing, and I think for software physical products, same. When your product is quote unquote done, or you're releasing it, or you're building a new version or whatever, you're not done. Like you have to own the whole cycle of product testing all the way through manufacturing release, and then continue to be involved in it, because I'm sure the marketing people are great and they're well intentioned, but to your point, like you're the expert in what it needs, or you can pull the people together to talk through, like, actually, this isn't true, or it's maybe, and what I often tend to find is like getting them, I'm going to really, marketing people, sorry, marketing people everywhere, but also not sorry. They, they tend to try to simplify things, which is awesome, but a
mhm.
lot of stuff isn't really simplifiable, or when you simplify it, it actually tends to mean other things. And then you actually become misleading, but you don't really realize it. So I love that as like a product lesson, because I also went through this, I don't know, probably a couple years ago. There's a big battle I had with product marketing, but and for folks like thinking about the shortcut, because like I an MBAs a lot too. I have one, so I can do it. But easy doesn't necessarily mean better. And the donut economics idea, to maybe tie that back again, is it's like, what are you measuring for? Are you measuring for simplicity of reading and like flashy marketing? Cool. If your product's really as good as you say it is, like it will get figured out in the marketplace eventually. The marketing is important, and it's important to communicate it. But if you have a shitty product and you have whiz bang marketing, people figure out very quickly that it's not a great product, and they move on. So I would say err on the side of having a great product and getting the marketing dialed in, versus having claims that might also then let down the people who buy your product, thinking that it's going to do something that it doesn't. And in a technical maker space, if you would, that really matters, because people figure out very quickly if the thing melts a little bit faster than they were expecting.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for like deplastification, if that's a word? Because again, I'm a smart person. I got the wool pulled over my eyes with biodegradable plastic, because I was like, that sounds great, right? You just put some water on it, and a few hours later it's gone, and oops, oh, by the way, it's shedding into the water supply, and now I get to drink it.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Like, is
Oh,
there, if I'm like a consumer maybe, and like I'm in the grocery store struggling to like, I gotta buy the plastic because I don't have a choice. Like, because I know maybe I'm wrong here, but I think plastic with like a lot of color in it tends to not be as recyclable because of the pigment problem. That could be totally wrong. And I know like thicknesses vary, the thinner the plastic, I guess the better recyclable it is. But is there other like tips that you can share, or is it just try to avoid it at all costs? If you're consuming it, if you want something durable, and I think maybe I make that point too, that like everything in the world, there's always positive and negative. There's always drawbacks with everything. And we've been talking a lot about single use plastic, like the plastic bottle to contain your liquid, terrible use of plastic. The tarp that you use for 3 years to keep your bikes from rusting, great use of plastic,
yeah.
because that'll probably last forever.
Yeah. That's what I think I'd think about what you're using it for, what you're buying it for, what your alternatives are, and trying to just put a little bit of thought into it. That's really the best you can do, and thinking through how long you're going to use something, what you're buying it for. And then as you learn more and more, you can make those decisions more quickly. Also, not assuming that something is actually going to get recycled, because as you mentioned earlier, like recycling rates in the US, most places are abysmal. It's 5 to
Yeah.
6% of plastics are actually recycled.
Yeah.
A lot are combusted, which they call waste to energy. And
Combusted. I love that. I just say burned.
yeah, yeah,
That's
no,
a
yeah,
really fancy marketing. It's like climate change versus global warming, right? It's like
yeah,
a word problem.
yeah. So waste to energy, you're still burning a plastic.
Yeah.
You have an air pollution problem then.
Is there a safe way to burn plastic? I guess maybe
I'm,
qualify safe. Like, is there like a least polluting way to do it? Because like it's like I always think of clean coal, and the idea with there's two kind of thoughts, right? Is like one, you somehow magically screen out all the bad chemicals in the coal burning, and then it's fine, which is nonsense. And then the other option is like you pump it underground or like pump it into a storage tank, and like okay, yeah, great, but like you still have to deal with the waste. Is there
yeah.
like a safe way to burn plastic? I feel like there isn't, but maybe I'm wrong.
There are ways where the adjacent communities are not as impacted as others.
Sure,
So, yeah, I think that's like the cogen facilities, and it's better than burning it in your backyard.
for sure. Yeah, I don't recommend that either. It, interesting. Oh, it's so fascinating. Any other? So we talked a little bit about the fabrics and the plastic tarps and stuff. Are there any other products that you are making or want to share maybe that are kind of cool too? Because I don't want to just shit on plastics the whole time. Because like again, I'm very anti single use plastic. I think we've kind of covered that, but there are good uses for plastic. Like modern medicine is not possible without plastic. A modern
Yeah.
life. I hate to sound like a '50s like Dow
Yeah.
Chemical commercial, but it's like modern life is made by plastic, right?
Yeah. No, and it totally is. I came home from the hospital and I had to have a catheter in. Like I that is a great use of plastic.
Yeah.
That was wouldn't have been possible
And
for
also a
me.
good use of single use plastic.
And it's great use of single use plastic. Yes. But as you mentioned, so many single use plastics aren't really useful or aren't necessary. They can be replaced with something that's more durable. Now, I've seen how people will just buy a new metal water bottle instead of buying a plastic water bottle for their like trip because they forgot it. That's actually not the best trade-off. You probably should just use a plastic water bottle because the metal was very, very resource intensive. And now you have 20 of those at home.
Yeah.
Do you need 20? No.
It's funny you say that because everyone I know who's into metal water bottles does have a cabinet full of like
Yeah.
metal water bottles. Yeah.
Yeah, we intentionally also refuse those new ones. We have our I think I lost one on an airplane at some point, so I had to replace that one. I was so disappointed. I called Alaska. I was on Delta and I like ran back and tried to get on the plane. They're like, it left. I was like, where did it go? They're like, it went to Redmond. I called the Redmond airport. I was like, there's a plane arriving. I
Yeah.
have a water bottle in this seat. Can you get it? And they're like, no.
I'm surprised you got a hold of somebody at the
I
airport.
I tried very, very hard. And then
Yeah.
I called like the next airport. I
Yeah.
did not end up getting it back.
That's
But
bonkers. Yeah. No, and I think we're hitting too on not only like single use stuff in general, but like durable goods, things that you use more than once. There's like an economic definition, but being choosy about those too. Like I remember, I think it was NPR broke a study a while ago about how the cotton bags that everybody gets, the tote bags, are actually like terrible for the environment, and a paper bag is way better.
yeah,
Even a plastic bag is
yeah,
actually better a lot of times than tote. And I'm speaking in generalities, but the amount of energy and water specifically that goes into cotton and then making it so it's usable and then having to reuse it and then the durability factor just doesn't really match up. Again, if you made thicker cotton bags, maybe it would be better. Uh,
but yeah. So something that I think I'm really excited about that we're making, just because it's so tangible and seen it and it fits in well. So we're making ski lift seats. We're not making, our partner's
yeah,
making them.
that's
So
cool.
those ski lift seats, they're usually made with vinyl. They last 20 to 30 years. They
Mm,
are in use forever. So it's a really slow turnover, but it's
sure.
consistent. So they make this product with our polypropylene now, and it's great because the ski industry is so impacted by climate change,
Yeah.
which plastics are one component driving CO2 emissions. So that's really exciting, and we think it's going to be a really good fit for that. It's recycled content, right? You're sitting on it.
Right.
It is outside for 20 to 30 years, so it still needs to be durable, but you are just sitting on it, usually wearing a lot of layers.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Because I don't really care what the seat feels like because I'm probably
Yeah.
cold or just
Yeah.
waiting to get up the mountain anyway. Yeah. No. So I guess, yeah, is there like a lot? So a lot of your products then are kind of like long term, like, is this in like a lot of it, especially tech for folks like, it's like the software du jour of the moment is always like the big thing. And then it booms and busts pretty quickly usually. But you're in like a long-term industry. If you're just getting into seat manufacturers today, there's a big market there, I guess, of ski lift seats, but the turnover time. Do you find it hard to try to like corner the next industry you want to go after? Or is it more because you're making like a base material that people manufacture out of, you just really going to the manufacturers and it's more of like an option? Or is it like both?
It's both. We're finding
Interesting.
that we need to find the people who are fabricating things. So the people who are actually making like the ski lift seats, or
Right.
who are making like hospital mattresses or dorm mattresses. We need to find those people who are interested in switching and offering a product, working with them to get the final product made and supporting them in that journey. And then even helping them somewhat to develop, here's why this product is superior. Here's why their customers should switch. So it's a really weird space to be in as far as
Yeah.
that product development, because we need to think through all of that, even though we're not in charge of most of
Right.
it.
Yeah, because you in some ways need to market demand for the actual like end
Mhm.
maker of the mattress, but also through the supply chain for the people who produce the covers or whatever that go on the mattress or however mattresses are made. That's that's so hard. Like I always talk to people outside of software and I'm like, software product managers complain all the time. Like we don't have no idea how easy we have it. I need to change something. I just go talk to people and at worst it's like maybe a few days. Like you need to change something. It could be multiple years.
Years long. Yeah. We started getting into agriculture, and we had some pilots with a large grower in California. Um, and they were like, yeah, it's 7 years of
Jeez.
qualification. And then, of course, they shut their nurseries down because of
Sure. Some
changing international trade recently.
that's
So we were
great.
like 3 or 4 years into a trial, and they
And
were
they're
like,
just
"Yep, we're shutting
done.
it down."
That's bonkers. Again,
Yep.
software product people, you don't complain. Just stop. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience that maybe we didn't talk about? Or I always like to talk through with people like the industries that you're working in are all over the place too. Cause like, again, you work in plastic, but plastic's literally, because we've talked about everywhere. But is there anything that how do you like de-plastic at home, or how do you get, you have something you're watching or listening or reading that you'd like to recommend to folks that gets you kind of out of the work mode and into back to like reality?
Something that I guess one thing is I like to share with people, because people do come to me about recycling advice all the time, which I love. I've educated myself about the Portland recycling rules
It's
a lot.
it's a lifestyle, folks. Like
It is.
having
They
lived
have
in
a master
Portland, it's a
recycler
life.
program.
Yeah.
I am not a master recycler yet. Don't be too hard on yourselves, right? Focus on one or two things that you know how to recycle. Paper is great, glass,
Yep.
metal. Focus on those and then try to add in, I know this plastic, this number one, shaped this way, this size is recyclable. Start there. Throw the rest out. Like wishful recycling is worse than just throwing it out because you're contaminating the stream. But don't be too hard on yourselves if you throw away that one piece, because you know what? Industrial waste is so much bigger of a problem. So
100%. No, and I love that. And I would challenge people too to like, we talked through like all so much information and we didn't scratch the surface, but just try to learn something new once a
yeah.
week or once a month. Like you don't have to like conquer the entire plastic. And I see that a lot, especially people who are environmentally conscious. Like I consider myself one of those people. It's really easy to get burned out being like, you just keep going down. Like polyester fabrics are in everything that we wear pretty much. It's very
Mhm.
difficult to not have them. and they shed microplastics every time I wash them.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right? Can I get away from that? Actually, no. I've tried,
Right.
and oh, people are like wool, but wool has its own. There's no perfect material. There's no perfect thing, but I can be an informed consumer, learn a little bit more, and then change, right? And if you
Hmm.
make the wrong determination, like I said, bioplastics, right? I had the dishwasher pellets that I thought the bioplastic meant that it was better. And frankly, it's probably worse.
Yeah. Right. But then you learn
But
and
then
you
I learned,
adjust.
and I'm exactly, you don't beat yourself
Exactly.
up over it. It's just a learning opportunity. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't? I always like to end with that one.
Gosh, I could talk forever about circular product development, but I know I think we've covered a lot of that, a lot of those themes. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much for having us, and enjoy the new family edition. And hopefully we'll get some better weather here soon. If you're not in the Pacific Northwest, we're getting flooded from above.
I love the rain.
Yeah.
So this is actually perfect weather for me.
I love the rain too, but I tried to go interact with the rain. It was yesterday, and I ended up like soaked, and
Oh yeah.
I was full of rain gear. I was like, what the hell? Like I can't
Yeah.
even go walk outside today because we have a pineapple express or an atmospheric river or both. I guess if you're interested in that, listen to the talk we had with Dimitri. Talked
Yeah.
about lightning. So thanks again.